never forget the day. It was January 4th, 1999, and I woke up in the morning and half of my body had gone numb, literally overnight. The doctors feared the worst, and they tested me for stroke, multiple sclerosis, Lyme's disease, lupus, and even brain cancer. I remember being in the hospital, being wheeled down a hallway just minutes away from a brain biopsy, where they would screw me into a halo device, my scalp would be cut open, 3 holes would be drawn in my skull, then they'd use a saw to cut that triangular piece of bone out, then pieces of my brain would be removed to study the tissue. And as I was being wheeled down the hallway, I heard my name being paged. The doctor on the other end of the phone said, "We're a university teaching hospital, and we change teams on the first day of each month, and now it's March 1st. He said, "I'm your new doctor, and I don't think you have brain cancer." And I said, "Well, what should I do?" He said, "Go to the desk, ask for scissors, cut off the wrist bracelet, and go home." You should have seen the nurse chase me down the hallway after that. But following 4 lumbar punctures, multiple tests and MRIs over that 3-month period, they realized that I did indeed have MS, multiple sclerosis. MS is a disease that is of the central nervous system, and it causes scarring on the brain and spinal column. And for me, those scars caused my lack of mobility, sensory issues, some vision loss, and a host of other illnesses. But when I heard those 2 little letters, MS, I panicked. I ran away from everyone and everything. I left my 20-year teaching career. I left a 22-year marriage. I sold my house. I left my friends and my community, and I ran away because I wanted to do everything I could while I still had good use of my legs. But I realized that it wasn't until I left that I really found myself again, and mountain climbing really helped me to do that. So what began as my father's dream became a goal that I would really strive for much of my adult life, and that goal was to climb the highest peak on each of the 7 continents. But that dream really intensified in 1999 when I feared I probably wouldn't have use of my legs for long. But it really all started back when I was in high school. I was in the kitchen with my father, and he said, "Someday I want to go to Africa and I want to climb Mount Kilimanjaro." My dad has always been athletic, and he was a runner, and I love him dearly, and I said, "Someday I'll go with you." 20 years later, we met in Africa, and we reached the summit on Dad's 61st birthday. So that was the start of it. Then 6 years later, and only 10 months after my diagnosis of MS, I went to South America to climb Mount Aconcagua, but really I began to climb the biggest hurdle in my life, and it was getting over that fear of MS. So on the millennium, 1999, 2000 New Year's Eve, I was one of only 14 people to stand on top of the mountain that day, and I realized that if I was strong enough to climb Mount Aconcagua, I was strong enough to take back my power and face my MS without fear and without shame, and just start my life forward again. So it was a huge, huge turning point for me in my life. So over the next few years, I started to climb as many things as I could do while I still had good control over my legs. So I climbed the highest peak in Europe, which is Mount Elbrus. And from there, I really began to run at kind of a frenzied pace, and I went to climb Denali, or Mount McKinley as most people call it. And I was experiencing a lot of back pain when I was on Denali. When I got back, the doctor said that I had a pinched nerve between the lower discs in my back and that I needed surgery. they told me that one of the lumbar punctures years before had caused a slow leak of spinal fluid, forming a blister on the nerve. And every time I carried my 60-pound pack and dragged a 60-pound sled, it would crush that. So I had surgery, and now my back's pretty darn strong. So from there, I headed to climb Mount Kosciuszko in Australia and continued on to the Vinson Massif in Antarctica. And for me, that was my real training ground for Everest. We made our first attempt at the summit. It was 45 below zero, 45-mile-an-hour winds. We got to within 200 vertical feet below the summit, and the decision was made to cancel the climb because it was so dangerous. So the next day, after about 10 more hours of climbing, we reached the summit. It was only 25 below zero and felt really balmy to us. So from there, I continued on to Mount Everest at 29,035 feet. That was my last of the 7 summits. Mount Everest journal entry, March 29th, 2009. Why Everest? For 20 years, I taught elementary and special education in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. My goal as a teacher was to help children believe in themselves and not be afraid to try. Now, it's my turn to learn that lesson. In attempting a goal as lofty as Everest, I give myself permission to try. I have to believe in myself in order to live my dreams. Sure, I might not always succeed at what I attempt, but there's no failure in that. The success is in the journey. It's always in the journey. So after hiking to base camp for about 2 weeks, we were really switching from being hikers to climbers as we reviewed ascending steep icy slopes with our ropes and harnesses. And I remember thinking to myself, what's this small town girl from Wisconsin doing in the world of mountaineering anyway? I had learned about mountain climbing by reading about it in books to start with. I had no sponsors. I had no way to repay the huge loan that I took out to do that climb. And I thought, am I crazy? I think I was just a girl living a dream and a person who was trying to get over her fear of MS. And there's no failure in just getting out there to try. Mount Everest journal entry, May 20th, 2009, overcoming fear. 9 grueling hours up the Lhotse face, and we're at 23,500 feet, Camp 3. The incredibly steep 40 to 60% incline and thin air causes us to take 1 step, then 7 breaths. 1 step, then 7 breaths. It's the kind of thing nightmares are made of. There are many things in life that once scared me. Being alone, having MS, being broke, or attempting things I was uncertain of. Now, at 52, I'm all those things at once. I'm here on this mountaintop in Nepal with no family to comfort me, $80,000 in the hole, hanging off the side of a wall made of ice, asking myself, am I afraid? Oddly, the answer is no. I trust that this is where I'm meant to be, and I'm feeling at peace. I'm here to learn about overcoming fear and about trusting my instincts. Mount Everest journal entry, May 21st. In climbing Everest, I'm learning to conquer my fear of failure. I've overcome my ideas of what limits me in my life, and I've learned that if I believe, I can achieve. I took a leap of faith in even attempting this mountain, and that was the first of many little steps that'll carry me all the way to the summit of Mount Everest, and those in my life as well. It's not the mountain we conquer, but ourselves, said Sir Edmund Hillary. So summit day arrives, And, you know, for many years, I felt like I'd been climbing the mountains and obstacles in my life, living with MS. But we all have obstacles in our lives. Mine happens to be called multiple sclerosis. Yours could be dealing with weight issues or high cholesterol or cancers or depression, even financial issues or things in your relationships. But they're all mountains that we have to approach one step at a time to continue forward to living our dreams and reaching our goals. And for me, it was time to get beyond defining myself by my disabilities and the things that I couldn't do and find out what my abilities really were. Here's a video of our climb up Everest. Five oxygen tanks later, I reached the top of the world at 10:39 Nepal time after 10 hours and 39 minutes up, 6 hours back down. And I was fortunate to become the first person with MS to stand on top of Mount Everest and complete the 7 summits. But I am one of the really, really lucky ones with MS, because mine is so stable right now. And for me, it was an honor to carry the hopes and dreams of all of us with MS with me every step of the way. And you know, people ask me, what was it like to be on top of the world? For those 10 surreal minutes that I was up there, I couldn't see a thing, because all the clouds that were in the valley came up when it heated up. Couldn't see a thing after 16 years of dreaming about it. But all I could do was to look inside. And what I saw was this person who had become brave since that terrifying day that I woke up numb. I saw a person who was no longer afraid to live life passionately, and a person who tried something that once would have scared her to death. And I saw this person with real hope for the future. Mount Everest, final journal entry, May 25th, 2009. Reinventing my life. Daughter, wife, teacher, ex-wife, ex-teacher, mountain climber. As I reflect over the past 2 months, many times I feel small and insignificant in my world. Who would have thought as a little girl growing up playing with dolls that my life would have progressed to where I am now? As I have moved through the ages and stages in my life, I felt the pain and pleasure of each of my 52 years. I'm soft, tender, feminine, yet wonderfully tough. I've reinvented my life over these past 10 years. I've gone from teaching young children to be brave and trusting themselves to teaching myself these very lessons. Through these experiences in my life, I've begun to teach others as well. My lessons: live your dreams, one step at a time. Trust, take a leap of faith, be brave, dream big, really big, and believe in the unbelievable. Climb beyond your limits. It's all a matter of mind over matter. So empower yourselves to just breathe, breathe, breathe.